Goat Jordan on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set. Make sure my mic is on. Eric, Dre, and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for 2, so damn rude. Recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy. No way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction. Kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest. What's the basis? Pick an athlete. Let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places. Sudden death. Take 10 paces. Turn and shoot. Boys the truth. Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place. Dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Go Jordan. All right, guys. Well, welcome into another episode of the Slumpbuster. I'm your host, Juju Talk Sports, joined, of course, by my co-host, MMA Dre. And then we are welcoming on to the podcast from the McCorvey and Cytryn show, Orlando McCorvey, Coach O, and Austin A. Money Cytryn. Welcome in, guys.
Thank you.
We're happy to be here.
Awesome to have you guys. So how's kind of like your podcast going? I know you guys are doing a lot more interviews these days. I want to tell like the folks about some of these interesting conversations you've had going into, you know, this kind of weird time in the NBA basketball talk. It's kind of an odd time to have a basketball talk show at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ironic because the corona kind of put a hold to us just talking basketball and really just had us tap into basketball with some of the people that we know, whether it's coaches, players. I really think we've been putting really good content out for people, whether it's players, coaches, parents. You know, in this day and age, everybody's trying to figure out a way to get glorified in this wonderful game of basketball. And I feel like, you know, we have really good insight for people who want to listen.
You know, just we kind of put our heads together, talking on the phone back and forth for a while. We said, look, we want to just kind of start our own thing, start recording, do a podcast. And, you know, it was originally just going to be talking about the NBA. Obviously, the curveball came with the corona. And I guess we just kind of put it together and changed a little bit of the direction. But it's all about just kind of shooting your shot and not being afraid to ask the question, I feel like, with everything you do.
Now, we have 2 coaches of winter sports on this show. So my co-host, Andre, here is a coach of youth wrestling. You yourself, Coach O, of course, you're at a junior college right now. Tell us about how, like, it's been for you as a coach, you know, kind of like going through, like, that recruiting process. Like, how do you guys kind of keep that off-season program working now?
I mean, everything has been shut down. The kids, they're back at home. Everything's virtual. Recruiting's pretty much been done. Coach got the recruiting done maybe about a couple weeks ago, and most of that's all been done virtual. This has probably been one of the weirdest and hardest times for kids to get recruited to go to college. Not only is it difficult because the transfer portal is probably at its all-time high where a lot of these D1s, D2s are taking kids that are transferring, and 2, you know, the coaches can't get out and come out and recruit these kids in this late time, whether it's coming to watch them at a exposure camp or all-star games. So now, you know, kids are trying to figure out a way if they, you know, want to go post-grad and maybe have an opportunity to show, you know, people that they can play, or do they want to go into college, not necessarily knowing if school's starting up in the fall. But you know, we got a pretty good recruiting class coming in. I think we signed about 4 or 5 kids, 2 kids about 6'7", 6'8", and a couple guards from Lehigh, which is a really good program on the west coast of Florida.
So have you heard anything about next season? Do you know if it's going to happen, or has there been talks of, hey, the NJCAA, right, is what you guys would play under, the organization body rather than NCAA? So
yeah.
Have they talked about possibly not having games next year?
There are talks. Some of the games that we had on our schedule this past year, some of those schools are having a hard time placing a game, whether the school wants to keep the athletic program going and all that. You know, this whole thing is really affecting all levels of sports, not just pro. It's really affecting the colleges, you know, because if there's no school, there's no money for, you know, the kids to go to school or for athletics to go and travel and play and do all these things. So, you know, this whole thing's really just kind of up in the air right now.
Now, Austin, as a Heat fan, you guys were probably having your best season since LeBron left you, so not getting to finish out this season. Do you think you guys are going to be making a little run in the Eastern Conference?
Honestly, bro, I love it. You know, just the fact that we're not going to go down. I mean, I hope the season, you know, comes back and resumes, but if it doesn't, just the promise of Bam and Jimmy, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero coming back is one of the most important pieces on the Heat. But when it comes down to it, I'm just kind of happy that we don't get to lose this year, because no way we were coming out of the East. Always ask me. I'm a big fan of Bam. I think Bam's top 15. I just swallowed hard when I said that, but I truly believe it. And I just hope it comes back, bro, when they lose.
Now I think Tyler Hero is a lot of people's heroes after his recent dating, his recent
the dating
relationship. Who's he with now? One of the Jenners. Beats me.
I know he was quarantining and chilling with a different model I saw on Instagram. He shot his shot, and he was chilling with her about 2 weeks later. So if he's next on with the Jenner, he's doing this thing off the court too.
You got to give it to Tyler, this like skinny like white dude, just like gain all the smoke shows. Yeah, but Jimmy, hands down, underrated player. I think he's one of my favorite players in the league. I don't think he gets enough credit as is.
I think Jimmy's also, I'd say, top 20. You know, the one thing about Jimmy is he's got to work on his offensive game, his jump shooting ability, his ability to get to the basket and finish. I think a lot of the times he's going up, pump faking, double clutching, and avoiding the contact, and the referees aren't treating him like LeBron or Kawhi. I mean, and at the same time, he's shooting 8-9 free throws a game. So I just think he has to worry about finishing and just being a little bit more elite on offense. You know how great of a defender he is, though.
Yeah. Now, a fun fact about the Miami Heat is they are the only other franchise besides the Chicago Bulls to retire Michael Jordan's legendary number 23. And that brings us, of course, the topic of conversation, the thing that has been saving our Sundays, the thing that has kept us sports fans at least happy, giving us that little taste to get us by. The Last Dance series finale was last night. We got to learn about a lot of interesting things. Steve Kerr's history. I was surprised we got a Steve Kerr episode. We got to learn about horrible pizza incidents in Salt Lake City, which is almost as bad as their fan base. And, of course, the GOAT. Now, I did have my little issues with this. I'm going to allow you guys to kind of share your thoughts on it. We'll kind of get a little deeper breakdown on it. Orlando, what'd you think of the last night's episodes?
I mean, I'm a Jordan guy, so whatever you kind of put in front of me, I'm probably going to think they're pretty good. I've been in the middle of reading 11 Rings, and some of the stuff that Phil was kind of talking about in terms of, the inside of the team, how it was operating. I think it was championship number 5. I thought they would give maybe Scotty a little bit more love because Jordan, really talked about that season that, Scotty was playing at a very high level and arguably could have won Finals MVP that year. But overall, I thought it was a great show. I loved watching Jordan go against Reggie Miller. I remember watching that series as a kid and, just brought back those memories. Jordan was my childhood superhero. So these Sundays, I felt like I was a kid, noon, 2 o'clock, watching Jordan play against, the Knicks on NBC. That's the type of vibe I was on. So I thought it was a great show.
What about you, Austin? How are you feeling about it?
Man, a lot of different emotions pretty much each episode. I'm born in 1990, so I'm 29. I was about 7-8 years old watching Jordan get Byron Russell, crossed up, and his momentum was just bringing the energy, brought him the other direction. But I didn't really know too much as a 8-year-old kid as I do now. So watching every episode, and it was one thing to watch highlights, but it just doesn't do Michael justice because the dude was just a straight beast competitor. Honestly, my favorite part about last night's episode though was when Reggie Miller talked about him and he said, "You don't talk, to me, call me Black Jesus." Like, who does that, bro? Like, I don't know. You got Lance Stevenson is blowing this in this LeBron's ears. Michael Jordan's telling people, "Call me Black Jesus." There's a little bit of a difference.
Now, Dre,
big difference, huge difference.
Now, Dre, you said that the Steve Kerr stuff kind of stuck with you a little bit more last night. Can you tell us what you thought about? I guess that would have been the first episode out of the two.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of what made this whole documentary series so great is that there is so much to actually happen to these guys in real life. I think there's a lot of teams where, they're really good teams. I think there's the potential to have a documentary on some of the LeBron teams and possibly the Golden State Warriors teams. But these guys all had so much of their own either issues or personal battles that they were dealing with. And Steve Kerr, one of his was losing his father in a really traumatic way. So I had no idea that had happened to him. I just knew Kerr was a good player player on, some of these Bulls teams. And then you hear about his father dying and just how hard Steve Kerr had to work to become basically good enough to the point where Michael Jordan, the best player on the planet, is telling you, one of the biggest series, most impactful series of their lives, that, hey, you better be ready because I know these guys are double teaming me. I know you're going to be open and I trust you enough to take that final shot, and so that really stood out to me. And especially the moments where they were talking about Michael Jordan literally punched Steve Kerr in the face one time at practice, but it's like, hey, we had to move past that. I know that he was trying to make me better. And then by the end of, where we got to, I started with being just this guy that got punched in the face by Mike to, hey, you're going to take this last shot for me because I know I'm getting double teamed. And we got to put this series into somebody else's hands, and it's going to be you. And so just to see that development on top of, like I said, those personal struggles where you're dealing with your dad passing away, that to me just culminated in fantastic moments for Steve Kerr. And I was really happy for him by the end of the series.
To kind of piggyback on what you were saying about, the internal stories or struggles that these guys had individually, as a coach, we try to tell these kids all the time, you got to be out for one another and play for one another. And yeah, out on the court, you got to all play as one, but off the court, you don't necessarily have to be their best friend, or you don't have to be running around in the same circles all the time for you guys to work together. And it's just kind of amazing how, especially that second three-peat, because Phil talked about it in the book and Jordan kind of talked about it, was how that second group, they had to learn a whole new set of guys and different set of egos to get them all to buy in as one. And, people don't realize how difficult it is to get all those personalities and traits to all come collective to buy into one goal. And I just found that fascinating with all the different distractions. They were still focused on one goal and they still held it down.
Now, Coach, I have an interesting question for you on that subject. Let's say you had a player who missed a practice to go on live television for a now defunct wrestling organization. How would you have handled that situation as a coach?
We made a lot of bread. Remember that.
It's funny. It's funny. Before I read Phil's book, I'd probably be going ballistic. Granted, it's, the NBA Finals. But after reading Phil's book and understanding how he managed Dennis and how Phil Jackson as a player was kind of that type of person, free-spirited and all that stuff. He even talked about in the book how during the season they let him go to Vegas for like 2-3 days, or it was like 48 hours. And he obviously didn't come back after 48 hours. And I think Jordan went out to Vegas or somewhere and dragged him all the way to practice, like hungover and everything after his like little binge. And from that day forward, he was locked in, focused on the goal. And Jordan was just kind of like impressed at the fact that this guy can go party and do all this stuff, still come back here, still work his tail off. And all he cared about was winning. Phil knew his players. So
I get that, but man, that's crazy. That's just too
Julian,
much. Yeah.
My bad. I just wanted to ask y'all. I know he's the greatest and the most competitive, but did y'all notice like how big his whiskey glass he was drinking every episode?
Well,
oh yeah.
It was pointed out to me his yellow eyes too. So.
Oh yeah, that too.
Kind of wonder, is that all just from, just the years of cigars, whiskey, everything else in Michael Jordan's lifestyle? It's crazy that he could just be still such a badass despite, all the other little vices that he had in between. Kind of tells you that those players of that era, completely different breed than like the players of today, because like I know LeBron will has his wine company and all that stuff too, but like if you told me LeBron was out partying on a Friday night, I wouldn't believe you. It just doesn't seem like something that would be in his nature or today's athlete's nature, aside from maybe like James Harden's proclivity to go to strip clubs in Houston. That's pretty much the most I really know.
There's a story. Someone sent it to me, but I was looking at the video today of Michael Jordan playing 36 holes of golf with Jeremy Roenick down in Coors Light all day, smoking cigars. Jeremy Roenick put a bet on Cleveland because he didn't think Jordan would be up to play. And Jordan said, we'll beat him by 20. And I promise you I'll have 40 something. And he had 40 something and they won by 25. And he was just like, how does a guy play 36 holes of golf, drink beer, smoke cigars, and dominate?
How does a guy put up close to 40 points while having food poisoning? And so not exactly a ringing endorsement for Salt Lake City pizza, exactly. Certainly if I make a trip out there, late night pizza is probably not going to be at my first top of the list priorities to get. Granted, I know if it's delivered by 5 guys,
exactly.
I'm probably going to, turn it down. I'm probably going to say, yeah, you keep this one on me.
That's the craziest part of the story to me, that his trainer said it. I saw him talking to Ernie Johnson on his podcast too, and he just said, yeah, the pizza guys came 5 deep. I guess they thought they were going to meet Michael Jordan or something. It's like, if that's what you thought, like, come on, man, it's something fishy. And if there ain't no anchovies, they probably put something else in the pizza that's not good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they even said it, right? Is everybody that was, with Jordan in the room at that point was like, nah, we're good. We're not going to have pizza because we don't trust it. But then they let, MJ, who has to play the next day, eat it all himself. I would have been like, hey, dude, like, I'll go drive to a McDonald's or something and pick you up your own food. Like, don't eat that pizza when 5 dudes are dropping it off.
Mm-hmm. When you hear that story from that point of view, and obviously us now in 2020 hearing about, Russell Westbrook and the comments that the people out in Utah are saying, you're just sitting there saying like, damn, dude, like that's how these people treat these guests that come to play. I get it. Like hostile environment. I understand you want your team to win, but damn, you got to do that to the other team's best player.
And Utah just seems like such a mild state, right? And it has all this like history with basketball, like poisoning the greatest of all time. Like that's some next level fanhood. But you know what? I'm okay with it still being called the flu game, because I'll say this. I don't know, the bad pizza game, it doesn't have that same ring. The food poisoning game, kind of a mouthful. Flu game, I'll stick with it. It's not historically accurate, but it's fine. Now, I'm still waiting for the LeBron James COVID-19 game. We'll see if that could officially help him supplant Jordan's legacy. It's going to be hard to do after, of course, just this documentary, which basically made a whole new sect of Michael Jordan fans. The thing I kind of like had my issues with on this one is I didn't feel like it was a complete documentary. And what I mean by that is I know it's built around the 98 Bulls season, but it's mostly supposed to be about Michael Jordan, the man, the myth, the legend, everything about him. I was kind of disappointed he didn't touch on his decision to return to play for the Wizards, or his later life and, purchasing the Charlotte Bobcats, the Charlotte Hornets as well. I kind of wanted a little bit of that in there just because that is part of the whole Jordan experience. It is part of his life, a kind of disappointing part of his life. But nonetheless, if we're going to show this documentary, The Last Dance, to people in, 20 years to kind of explain Michael Jordan, they should know about the time when he came back to play for the Wizards. They should know about like what he's done so far to this point as a businessman, because that's what he wanted with this documentary, the complete encapsulation of his life.
I can see why you might want to see some of that. I honestly wanted to kind of see a little bit more point of view from like Phil. There were some details from the book that I just felt like the documentary didn't really touch on, or I feel like they didn't really talk too much about the actual season of The Last Dance, and it kind of just breezed through it. So I think that's kind of some of the stuff that they left out. I mean, yeah, maybe some of the Wizard stuff might be interesting to see, just him as a 40-year-old man bullying Kwame Brown or whatever. But, I just think I don't think that would really captivate the whole story of Michael Jordan. I think they did everything the right way.
I just think, the why would be kind of interesting. The why are you coming back to play for this like fledgling organization as the Wizards, if you're going to come back at all, would have been kind of like an interesting kind of thing to touch on, just because it's the ending of the documentary. Even if it's just like 10 minutes at the end, I feel like that would have been at least like a complete arc, because we saw him all the way from his rookie season, his college seasons, his high school seasons. It would have been nice to see that like end part, that final chapter, but that's just kind of how I felt about it. It's not a huge deal. It's still a top flight documentary, but not a complete documentary in my mind.
For me, I know exactly what you're saying. I just kind of think that this was a moment where, I know nobody might believe me, but Jordan felt a little threatened. So he had to release this documentary to remind everybody and enlighten the younger fans, who's the best player ever. And I think by putting in some stuff on the Wizards, time, even though he had a great couple seasons with them, it wasn't the elite Michael Jordan. So if he put that together with it, I think fans, especially with LeBron playing the way he is at 35 and, this year, they might be like, all right, LeBron was, but you know what I mean? So it's just, I don't think he showed any weakness in this documentary. And if they put the Wizards years, for him, in his mind, it would be kind of his weakest part of his career, even though he was older.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, Austin. And I was even, scrolling through Facebook, and you see these different polls that ESPN puts out and Bleacher Report and all that stuff. And ESPN, I think, recently just asked a bunch of people like, hey, who would you rather have, Michael Jordan or LeBron as your teammate? Who is better offense, defense? Who has the better even shoes, right? The best brand of shoes? Whose shoes perform better? And everybody now started to vote Michael Jordan in literally every category, right? They even had like, who's the better passer? And without a doubt, like there's no way Michael Jordan is a better passer than LeBron James.
Right.
But still, everybody was like, 70% of people were like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan's a better passer. Michael Jordan was better on defense, which I agree. He's better on offense, like every category. And a lot of it, I think he was, right? Like shoes, I would say Jordan shoes are more iconic. But to be that swayed that LeBron James literally gets nothing over MJ in that poll, I think just shows you that, hey, this documentary really did help sort of boost Michael Jordan's recognition and sort of the aura surrounding Michael Jordan. He definitely benefited from cutting the documentary off where it ended.
No doubt. I mean, just growing up in that time, it was almost like, how can he come back? And, you know, when he did come back with the Wizards, from my point of view, the team was filled with a bunch of young guys that weren't necessarily playing hard, and it was almost his way of kind of saying like, hey, I'm partial owner. I can come out and be old and still show you guys how to play. But obviously you could tell in that times, and if you were to move Jordan's mentality into now, I don't know if it'll really translate with this young generation of kind of like in your face, tell it like it is. If you don't like it, there's a door.
Well, I'm going to ask you like to give technically 2 ratings, right? So I'm going to ask for just the ratings on just last night's couple episodes and then the series as a whole. So once again, so our rating system, strikeout, foul ball, base hit, warning track power, or home run for a 5-star rating there. Starting first, let's go with you, Austin.
For a whole, I'll give it a 5-star. I mean, every single episode, not trying to give out a couple little random facts about me. I'm emotional, but I shed some tears. The greatness brought me to tears, yo. So just the fact that a documentary could do something like that spoke volumes to me. So I'm going to have to give it a 5.
How about you, Coach O?
I give it a 5. Like I said before, most things Jordan, I'm probably going to give it a 5. I definitely learned a little bit more stuff about him and the journey of the team, especially kind of the stuff in the early years, because I met Jordan when I was like 7 years old, and I was born in 84. So that was around 90, 91, right when he was really hitting that championship phase. So I remember watching him play and doing these things, but I didn't know the background story and the triumph that he had to go through and the Pistons and how they beat him up and all that stuff. So it was kind of like refreshing to kind of see that from that point of view, because when you're a kid, especially at that age, 7, 8 years old, you don't know anything about basketball, especially at my age and the basketball that I've been able to watch and learn. You know, it was nice to see that as a 35-year-old man. So I give it a 5.
Okay, gotcha. So a couple of home runs there for like the series as a whole. Did you feel that way about just episodes 9 and 10 respectively as well?
I think 9, I probably give it a 5, and I probably say 10, I give a 4.5.
Okay.
I kind of want a little bit more detail of that Pacer series, and you know, I feel like they left some stuff out there.
Okay, Dre, how are you feeling? How about your ratings for these?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a home run to the episodes, and then I'm going to give a home run to the series as a whole. I do have a few, I guess, quips with the pacing of the story and like the linearity of it. So they jump back and forth, I think, a lot in the storytelling between a lot of the episodes. But those to me are just minor things. And when we already talked about it, is the story just came together so well. The fact that, you know, these guys experienced so much, and you got one of your players running off to Vegas or doing WrestleMania stuff. You've got Michael Jordan and Steve Kerr losing their father, Scottie Pippen being underpaid. Like, all of this is just so crazy that it makes the perfect documentary, in my opinion. And I don't know if we'll ever see a team that's as, I guess, embattled and going through these issues, yet still achieve such greatness again in our lifetimes.
And as far as like where I'm going to go with it, so considering that I gave last week's 7 and 8, which are still, I think, my 2 favorite episodes out of the entire series arc, I gave those home runs. I'm going to actually say that the episodes 9 and 10 themselves were like warning track power for me, a 4-star rating, just because, you know, they kind of did miss on a couple little things that I would like to have seen. Not necessary, but would have been nice to have seen in the documentary. As series as a whole, though, and I kind of said it, like, it's a home run. Out of here. Frankly, you know, like, we needed it. It was important for the timing, considering COVID. We've seen a lot of really good documentaries right now. And just overall, you know, just to expose Michael Jordan to a whole new generation of fans who didn't get a chance to really see him play. You guys talked about, so born in the early 90s. So you got a little bit of Jordan, and kind of like, for me, like 94, mid-90s, it's kind of like, yeah, I got to see him in like Space Jam. I got to see him as Jordan the Wizard, but didn't really get a chance to enjoy prime Michael Jordan and just seeing his ability to switch hands on some of those layups or the impressive dunks or just the mentality, like that like minute long clip of him just talking about what it takes to win, talking about wanting his teammates to win with him. If that doesn't get you up in the morning, if that doesn't like spark some energy in you, some emotion to want to go out there and, I don't know, get shit done, I don't know what it's going to take. But, you know, if you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. Well, we're not going to be taking any breaks here on this podcast.
Yeah, that not to interrupt you, but I mean, that one line is pretty much my mentality in the sport. And like when I heard that, my wife looked at me and was like, dude, that's you. And it's like to a T, you know, and obviously it gets misunderstood and misconstrued, but at the end of the day, I want to win, and some people don't want to win as much as you do, and sometimes your passion can get turned into other things. But when you have your leader that's literally first in sprints and he's out there working his tail off, like that was one thing I don't know if he really said in the documentary, but in Phil's book he talked about how he couldn't take days off because he knew if he took a day off, Scotty would take a day off. So he would always have to get to the gym just so Scotty could emulate him. And it's like, I think Jordan doesn't get that much credit helping create Scottie Pippen to be the legend that he is, because without Jordan, who knows what Scottie Pippen would be historically.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, but you know, we didn't really touch on it or the review aspect of it, but Scottie Pippen as a whole, this series kind of didn't do him a lot of favors, some would say, whether it be the holdout, whether it be the migraine situation, the first couple episodes. Let's see, what else? So the back injuries during the series.
Refusing to come back in.
Yeah, that was mentioned last night. And then, yes, the refusing to come back in. That one, that's going to stick with me for a while whenever I think about kind of like Scottie Pippen's legacy as a whole, because you just don't do that. You just don't.
From an organizational standpoint now, like, yeah, you didn't hear about all the other stuff in the first episode about him being underpaid and all this stuff. But as everything kind of played itself out, you can kind of see why the organization was kind of like, all right, well, he refuses to go into play. He doesn't do this. Well, maybe we shouldn't give him any extra money.
It's hard to do that, you know. Like, I was listening to someone a few weeks ago that's basically said, if you're going to tell your boss, fuck you, eventually your boss can say, fuck you back. And that's kind of, I think, what happened with Scotty on that one.
And a lot worse, too.
This is a message brought to you by the Foundation for a Perfect Package.
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Because the only frill I want is the one up top.
Because being in a relationship is not an excuse to be lazy.
Because I like talking ball, not smelling like them.
Because deforestation is proven to prevent forest fires.
Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped's Crop Preserver guarantees that you smell your best all day long.
Manscaped Boxer Briefs are the most comfortable underwear on the market.
Manscaped's advanced skincare technology makes nicks a thing of the past.
Manscaped is the #1 in men's grooming. Subscribers get 2 free blade refills every 3 months. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get your Lawnmower 3.0 today.
We are the Slumpbusters.
And we approve this message.
All right, guys, let's get into some kind of like headlines, some things that have been happening. There was this statement that was made by former Cy Young Award winner Blake Snell of the Tampa Bay Rays. Baseball is probably going to be the next sport that kind of gets back up and running again. So we see UFC's obviously full systems go, but baseball is talking about July, 82-game regular season. There's going to be some issues as far as like the revenue splitting when it's all said and done. So it's kind of interesting whenever you have one of your stars make a statement like this. For me to take a pay cut is not happening because the risk is through the roof. No, I got to get my money. I'm not playing unless I get mine. Okay, the risk is way the hell higher and the amount of money I'm making is way lower. Why would I think about that? He also kind of broke down kind of like more or less the pay structure of it. I'm risking my life. If I'm going to play, I should be getting the money I signed to be getting paid. I should not be getting half of what I'm getting paid because the season's cut in half on top of a 33% cut of that half. So I'm really getting like 25%. He talks about the taxes argument there. The biggest issue I have from it from the get-go is it just kind of seems tone deaf because even when you take in all the numbers that Blake Snell mentioned, he's still going to be getting at minimum 6 figures, if not 7 figures to play this Major League Baseball season. Whereas 30 million plus Americans are currently on unemployment right now. You have several thousand healthcare workers who don't get paid close to nearly that much. Hospitality workers, grocery store workers, a lot of people don't get paid a large amount of that. And then if we're talking about the MLB season coming back in general, the way I see it, if you are one of these athletes, you're probably going to be one of the best taken care of in the country in terms of testing, access to healthcare, access to being able to take care of yourself should, God forbid, you get this disease. When you hear kind of Blake Snell talking about this kind of stuff, guys, how are you kind of feeling? Dre, do you have a take from the get-go?
I think you're right, is that it does come across as tone deaf. We have a bunch of what we call essential workers, right? And these essential workers aren't getting paid any extra. I know that there has been talk of we do want to increase their pay in some way, right, from Congress and other government officials, but obviously nothing's been done yet. So if you're making $7.50 at McDonald's, you're going to keep making $7.50 at McDonald's, even though you have to go and constantly be, possibly exposed to this virus. So for a professional athlete to come out and say like, hey, you got to pay me my full salary if I'm going to play, even if it's just half a season, right, or a quarter of a season or whatever, it does come across as tone deaf. But I think this is one of those concerns, though, that is going to be difficult when it comes to starting up sports again, is that, yes, the leagues want to get going as soon as possible just because they're losing out on billions of dollars. And I get that. Like, if I'm MLB, NBA, NFL, like, I'm trying to get going as quick as possible. The NFL has a little bit more leeway, right, is they don't really have to start until next preseason. But part of the problem is, what happens if your players really do not feel safe, right? And they don't want to take the field or take the court. And so I do think that he does have a valid concern with his health and that, hey, like, I don't want to be exposed to something that could potentially kill me. Most of the time, we don't see somebody that's a pro-level athlete dying from the disease, but, it still puts his health and his family in jeopardy. So I get his concern. But at the same time, if you're going to play at all, like, you're not playing the full season, don't take full pay. And then it's also harder on the league. Like, the league's in a rough situation too, where they're not getting all of their revenue that they had thought that they were going to receive this year. So they can't even pay you their full, the full salary, probably even if they wanted to.
How about you two guys? How do you feel about a professional level athlete making a statement of this nature?
I mean, he has a valid point about, him being exposed and all that, but you hit it on the head. These guys are pretty much going to be tested all the time. And, it sounds like the fans aren't going to be there to watch them. Second of all, like, there's high school baseball players that played maybe like 8-9 baseball games down here in Florida. There's college baseball players that didn't even get half their season. And those people would love to go out and play baseball right now, and they don't even get paid to play. So, my thing is, if you don't want to play, then don't play. Don't get paid. If you're going to play and you're only playing half the season, so you're only going to get half the money. And to be honest with you, it's a lot more money than most people are getting right now. So, my thing is go play or just don't. I don't know. These guys are playing a sport. I get it. They're putting a lot of money in these teams' pockets and they're getting fans to come out there, but, they're playing a sport and, you're setting an example for the next generation. So if you're just going to kind of go out there and say, I don't want to play, I need my full salary, then, you're only playing for half the season. Like, he doesn't deserve full pay. That's just my take.
What about you, Austin? How you feel?
Honestly, I feel that if he plays 82, he should get paid for what he's playing. And then it's tough. I take sides with the athletes, because I'm a dude, I referee basketball, try to get in some men's league here and there. And if the men's league is 2 days a week, I say, no, I need my full week. So you got these dudes playing in the best competition hard every single night, back to back, 4 days a week. So I think the way they play and with the effort they do, I think they deserve to get paid, the money they get. But to ask for more, I just think it kind of defeats any purpose of what they're getting paid right now, because it's just they're getting so greedy, it seems like. At the end of the day, you play 82, why do you deserve double unless everybody's getting double? If the essential workers are getting double, then I'm cool with everybody. And I get double for just –
I want my double too. I want my double too, bro. And yeah.
it's going to be interesting experiment to see when fans do attend. Is Blake Snell going to get more boos, or are the Astros going to get more boos? Because they both are pissing people off with this one. It's just, like I said, if you're like kind of one of the millions of Americans who want to go to work and can't go to work, it's one of those statements that hits a little bit closer to home. And that's why it's just like frustrating to hear like a comment like this. I understand where he's coming from the risk element, but there's risk to everything, guys. I mean, I'm saying, said it out there before. You can walk outside, get hit by a bus. There's a chance it could happen, but we can't just live based off like the probabilities of it, especially like, again, these guys are going to be taken care of better than the majority of Americans in this country.
Yeah.
The amount of testing, the amount of healthcare that these guys are going to get if they do play is going to be through the roof. I mean, look what Dana White and the UFC is doing, and they have been very effective at being able to tell, like, for example, a fighter did test positive, they sent him home right away. They were quick, they enacted on it, and they're cleaning house right now in the UFC. With the last 3 fights, the last 3 cards they've done have been record numbers as far as viewership, pay-per-view buys, everything. So
easily, there's nothing else to watch on TV, bro. They're capitalizing on it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Dana. We talked about Michael Jordan with being that asshole mentality. Dana White, you know, you kind of have to be an asshole to like win and be able to capitalize on situations, and that's what UFC and Dana White have been doing. Now, let's kind of like talk about some other kind of like stuff that's kind of come across the table this week. So in the world of the NFL, so aside from what I feel are Blake Snell's embarrassing comments, there is a embarrassing potential rule change thrown out there for the NFL. And this is regarding the Rooney Rule. So there's been a lot of controversy over the last couple of years as far as the lack of minority head coaching hires in the sport. Topic we've definitely covered on this show before, but so this proposed rule change, for anyone that hasn't heard about it, essentially, if you were to hire a minority head coach, and that coach was to be on your team for a year or longer, that team would be rewarded with additional draft pick compensation, or at least being the ability to move up in the 3rd round. Now, for myself, I just kind of like look at that. And again, you talk about like tone-deaf statements. You look at things that are kind of a little bit, frankly, condescending. I'm not a big fan of it. I think, like, for me, if I'm going to be hired, I want to be hired because I know I'm the best at my position or my field or what I'm doing, not because I think that the organization or my boss is going to get an extra kickback from it. So, Coach, how are you feeling on this one?
I don't like it as a backhanded slap. I mean, I just think it's complete BS just to incentivize teams to get better draft picks just to pick a minority coach. I mean, yes, it's an issue. The fact that these teams are predominantly African American, and I'm not saying that, you know, a white male can't motivate black males, but sometimes a black male wants to, you know, see another black face in their face kind of motivating them. And it would be nice to kind of see that more often in the NFL. I mean, think about it. You know, this league has gone through so many different social injustice changes in the last 2 years or 3, with all the Colin Kaepernick stuff and the Jay-Z stuff and all this other crap. And it's almost like you're just making it worse. Like, we know your owners are racist, and this is just making it even worse. And I just don't like it at all.
What about you, Dre?
Yeah, so I agree. I think it's sort of a backhanded, like, hey, we're trying to help you out. And I do appreciate that the NFL is trying to do something, you know, and Coach Owen, I think you were sort of getting at is that we see the ratio of players that are black and, you know, or other minorities in the league compared to the ratio of coaches. And you could tell it's majority all white coaches, right? Like, I think Brian Flores and Mike Tomlin in the league right now is the 2 black head coaches. And I think that's probably about it. And so obviously there's some discrepancy there. And you can tell that, like, hey, there is something wrong. It's either with the owners or the way they're evaluating coaching talent. Something needs to change. Something needs to be fixed. But I don't think this is the way to do it. This is basically just patronizing me, saying like, hey, you know, we're helping your team out. And I, as a coach, would feel less valued. I'd feel that the organization is only keeping me around to get better draft picks or move up in draft position in the 3rd round or whatever round it might be. I'd rather go out and prove myself. And if you're a coach like, let's say, Brian Flores, for instance, last year, he did a fantastic job with the Dolphins. Nobody thought that they were going to be that good. And he ended up doing well. They had a much better record than everybody anticipated. And they were able to draft the quarterback still that they had wanted. And then Mike Tomlin, he's never had a losing season as a head coach. He's had a lot of tied seasons
Mm-hmm.
or lower winning seasons, you know, in that
Mm-hmm.
10-6 range, but he's still never had a losing season. So these black coaches, like, they know that they're good coaches. We just need to find other ways of making sure that the league and the owners are doing their due diligence and saying, hey, we're going based off talent and who's most deserving, and not just off skin color. But this, I don't agree with this policy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's an idea. I get that we're trying to fix the problem and we're just trying to throw as many things at the wall and see what sticks as possible. But I feel like there has to be a better conclusion that they could have drawn than this. I was praying kind of that this was a joke headline when I first read it. I was like, this can't be real, right? Like, but here we are. It still needs to be voted on, approved, and everything like this. And I think hopefully based off the public backlash that this has received, it will get shot down. But ultimately, too, and my thought on it overall is just like, if you're owners, you're going to do whatever you want to win, because wins equal money in this general sport of like the NFL. So like, if you can find like someone that can connect to these players in whatever way that is, and it doesn't really matter what that person's skin color is, it's a matter of like, are they qualified enough head coach? Now you look at coaches like Eric Bieniemy and you wonder like, what is that kind of like disconnect? Because you know how well the Andy Reid coaching tree has done in the league. Look at what would it take to really incentivize to get like someone like that a coaching job over like a Joe Judge. I think the biggest problem in head coaching right now is nepotism that kind of comes with the coaching trees as a whole, because generally a lot of the coaches that have jobs in the league right now, it's either they know someone who brought them on, or they coached under this guy and let's bring him in. A lot of coaches' sons are in the league right now. I think that's probably the biggest thing that needs to be phased out potentially, but it's tough.
That's coaching in a lot of sports. I mean, in basketball in particular, that's huge in the college game. Even in the NBA, think of, is it Bickerstaff? Didn't he take over someone's team this year? I mean, it's all over, the whole minority thing, even in college basketball and probably in the NBA. You know, there's not that many black head coaches in general. So, I mean, I'm with Dre on the fact that, yeah, they're trying to make a little bit of an effort, but I just kind of think this effort's like the worst like handout they could probably give. Like, it's almost like, hey, we know there's shortage of black coaches, but just to kind of, you know, let you come back, we'll give you some reparations for it. You know, it's like, I don't know. In 2020, it's just it's a very, very bad message, I think.
Austin, let me get you in kind of in this conversation. Do you have any potential ideas for like fixing this? Because we always like address the problem. We always say this is a problem, but unfortunately the big problem that I see is particularly when we talk about this in the media, no one's thrown out answers, right?
Man,
a lot of questions. You can say this is an answer, but it's not a great answer is the one thing to look at it.
I'd say, man, it's a good start, just a bad idea. You know, to me, it's 2 + 2, and right now I think there's 3 black head coaches in the NFL. But at the end of the day, I think you got to just hire more, you know, minority coaches, and there's a lot of people out there that deserve it. It's a hard topic because at the end of the day, like when I read that, I was just confused. I didn't even know, like I thought it was a joke. I thought it was kind of like, you know, one of those made up articles. I didn't think this was really a proposition. So I just think we have to come up with a lot better ways to not insult people that we should probably give more jobs to, instead of just kind of, here's a backhanded thing. We're not going to hire you more, but we'll just give you a little draft pick here.
Here's kind of like another thought I have. I feel as like the media, we could be better when it comes to minority head coaches, because too often, like when we've seen like several coaches be one and done, several minority head coaches be one and dones in the league, such as Steve Wilkes or Vance Joseph had a couple years with the Broncos. But it seemed like after poor seasons, and both of those coaches went to rebuilding teams that weren't really exactly in a position to win. The media was the ones calling for their heads. Honestly, like there's a ton of people that were like, man, you look at Vance Joseph, he's just not getting the job done with the Broncos. Steve Wilkes, like the Cardinals were horrible last year. Steve Wilkes is not the head coach of the future. And it's like, well, if we're not giving them a chance and we're the people driving the narratives on this, then how is like anyone else going to give them the opportunity, right? And, you know, to like the credit, so like you have like situations like Marvin Lewis, who was there for 15 years. I know it's easy to hammer on all the bad things, kind of like with Marvin Lewis, such as the fact they never won a playoff game. But overall, you look at the success the Cincinnati Bengals had during that time compared to the rest of their franchise's history. You have to give a guy like Marvin Lewis a lot of credit. Now, there are situations where it's like,
no doubt.
Yeah, where there are situations like it's Hugh Jackson, for example, right? Hugh Jackson just is a bad coach. Doesn't matter like his ethnicity at all. You look at the record, you can't justify like a Hugh Jackson. That's fine. But, like I think we could give a little bit more leeway to these coaches to get put in just bad situations. Like what happened with Brian Flores. He went to a team that was honestly dog shit. Like if you look at the Dolphins were giving him and was managing to turn that into just one of these teams that a lot of people are excited about moving forward. I think we just got to give more time and effort to allowing these coaches to grow.
Well, it's just an unfortunate narrative. I was watching Glory Road yesterday, and it was actually kind of comical when the coach walked into the bathroom hearing, the white reporters say, how can a team full of 5 black players beat a team full of 5 white guys? And it's almost comical because now it's almost the complete opposite nowadays. And it's unfortunate that people still have that stigma, like, oh, a black guy can't run a team. He's not smart enough to do this, or he probably can't do this. They need to hire a more offensive-minded guy like this or like this, or, kind of like you were saying, who's the Jets coach that was black? What's his name? He just got fired a year or two ago, and he's the DC, I think, with Arizona.
I know this one, Todd Bowles. There we go.
Todd Bowles. Okay. I feel like some of these guys don't get the time that some of these other coaches get to kind of, implement their system and put their program in place. Not everybody has an overnight success and changes a team to a playoff team in their first or second year. So it kind of takes some time where I feel like some of these guys don't get the time. Like Mike Tomlin, for example, is a guy, you just see him. He's a player's coach. He gets those guys fired up, and he knows how to relate to some of those guys. And I personally feel like some of it, comes from them looking like him. He can kind of relate to those people and understand the lingo and the culture and how to motivate that type of kid, or that type of male. And I just think guys don't get enough time to implement their system. I just think it's unfortunate that these guys still have that narrative that they just think a minority can't do that job.
And I thought too, and Dre can touch on this, obviously he's a Steelers fan. Mike Tomlin, for some reason, he has been one of the more criticized head coaches in the league when I talk about kind of like the weird media narratives too that kind of get talked about. Obviously never had a losing season in the NFL, and yet I feel like every year we're talking about Mike Tomlin as a potential like hot seat head coach. Now, Dre, what do you kind of like think of your own personal head coach in this situation, as he's most recognizable minority head coach in the league?
Yeah, so for me, prior to last season, I was sort of on the fence. I was like, maybe Tomlin sort of run his course in Pittsburgh, right? We haven't been seeing the results that we once saw when he was able to get to the championship, right? And to win those Super Bowls. But then I saw last season where we literally had garbage throwing the ball at our quarterback position, right? As we lost Big Ben, and then Juju Smith-Schuster was out for, a few games. We had some other players that were hurt. James Conner wasn't performing like he had normally done the season prior. And yet, he was still able to basically get us within striking distance of the playoffs and still, not have a losing record, and was able to avoid that. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm totally on board with Tomlin, but I think it's a combination of a few things. So one, I think it is that the Steelers, the fan base, and I think the league as a whole expects the Steelers just to be so good all the time, just because they're one of those historic franchises that very rarely do you see outside of the playoffs. So I think that adds a little bit to it. But then the other thing is, I think you're right. I think part of it does have to do a little bit with race, and that, like, had this been a white head coach, if you were to say, hey, this white head coach has never had a losing season and they've won Super Bowls, they've gotten teams to a few Super Bowls, and they're always in the playoffs, right? And now that we're expanding, he would have been in the playoffs every single year pretty much. I think everybody says, oh yeah, why would you ever get rid of that guy? That's got to be the first or second best coach in the league. But since it's Tomlin, everybody's like, oh, you got to fire Tomlin. And Tomlin's not perfect, right? Like, we've seen him make his mistakes. He doesn't get the team necessarily always ready for when, we're playing easy teams, right? I think there's a lot of trap games that we end up losing to teams that we're just underprepared for. But at the end of the day, like, if you look at his resume and you look at his record and you see what he's been able to do, you're exactly right, Juju, is that he takes a lot of heat unnecessarily.
Now, Dre, Orlando, either one of you guys can answer this one. I asked Austin this. What are the answers? What is a good plan to really get things up and going in this position without giving extra incentive draft pick to do it?
I don't know, man. That's an interesting question. The way they had it before, where I think you had to interview at least one, I think you had to interview at least one minority for a job. And I don't even know necessarily that even really kind of opened the door for some of these guys to get that opportunity. Honestly, I don't know when it'll take, but this is just really way out in left field. But I think it's going to take some big time entertainer or someone to own an NFL team to hire a black coach or have more African-American money in these ownerships of teams to really start changing the head of the team. I just think the owners are so, I don't know, I just feel like they're still in that old stigma. I mean, it's still to the point where some of these teams have a hard time picking a black quarterback. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I just think it may take, someone like just throwing this out there. Maybe LeBron James retires and buys the Cleveland Browns, and someone else, some other black entertainer wants to buy a NFL team. I think that might change it, but I don't know if there's an answer to this in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's probably actually what will need to happen. I think you're exactly right is, if Jay-Z owns a team, right? I know he's partnered with the NFL. Now he buys a team. I'm sure like Cam Newton, right? We see Cam Newton still doesn't have a job, and he's probably the best available quarterback right now on the market, and probably one of the best available quarterbacks that was, available in free agency. He doesn't have a job. I guarantee, you have like a Jay-Z or like you said, another black entertainer probably picks them up right away and has no issue with it. Or, if Tomlin, for whatever reason, was to get fired, I guarantee, a black owner would pick up Tomlin in a heartbeat. I think any owner would. So I think you're exactly right on that. Other things, I've looked at diversity in the workplace for like office jobs, and they do things like trying to anonymize, the way that you put in your resume. So that way you're not just going off of like, oh, what's their name, right? Is it John Smith or Jaquan, right? Or something like that. So if there's a way to anonymize, how you select your candidates so that you don't know who it is that's applying. You basically just see like, hey, this person has 5 years coaching experience. This other person has 7. Who do you want to choose in that pool? I think that might help. I don't know, unfortunately, the process of how you select coaches in the NFL as much as I do like just regular workplaces. I think that might help. One other idea, and it sort of is still another backhanded sort of compliment, but like if the league says, hey, if you've got a minority coach, right, we'll maybe cover their salary so it doesn't come out of your organization, all the way up to, the max, you could pay the max for a head coach or whatever. I thought that was another idea just to give teams an incentive to be like, hey, we're willing to try out a head coach. And at the very least, it saves us money out of our organization, right? But I could see the same argument of like, oh, well, now you're just hiring me to save money, right?
Here's where I could see it making a turnaround. And it could happen very quick. Let's say Brian Flores comes out, kicks ass this year. Dolphins look as a potential Super Bowl contender. One thing we know about the NFL, it's a copycat league. Everyone wanted to hire the next Sean McVay 2 years ago. Everyone is now looking for their athletic black quarterback after seeing what Lamar, Deshaun, RG3, and a lot of quarterbacks have done this decade. If we do see that next success story happen, whether that's Eric Bieniemy or another upstart head coach potentially in the future, hell, even maybe Anthony Lynn out there in the Chargers has a really good turnaround and really takes control of like the narrative that he's the head coach of the Chargers, then I think that could potentially be the catalyst that potentially leads to more, as more owners are like, I want to get into this market. I want to get a slice of the pie. Another idea I've seen thrown out there is offensive head coaching is like really what is very much desired right now in the league. Unfortunately, there's been a shortage of minority coaches that are on the offensive side of the ball.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, if more minority head coaches or more minority coaching candidates could get on that side of the ball, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, that's going to open the door big because that's going to be who you're going to pull from for your offensive, defensive coordinator jobs, from your assistant coaching jobs, and those are what's going to lead to that head coaching pipeline.
Yeah, I was honestly going to touch on to that was the league loves bringing in these offensive-minded OCs that come in and take head coaching positions. And I'm sitting there thinking, when's the last time you heard of a black offensive coordinator that was labeled an offensive genius?
Honestly, like around the league, none.
I mean, my uncle, for example, he's associate athletic director for the football team at Clemson. You know, him being an offensive coordinator at Alabama, I want to say he was the first African-American offensive coordinator at University of Alabama. And I know that was a very controversial time in the 90s, but, you know, it's just from the 90s to 2020, like that's one stigma you don't hear is a black offensive coordinator or a black coach being labeled as an offensive genius. It's always like black defensive coordinator. You know, he brings in this tough-minded defensive philosophy, you know, for example, like Todd Bowles. I just think those narratives, especially in 2020, that word narrative is so powerful where all of a sudden it just, you get this label and it sticks on you and it sticks on you. And then all of a sudden, like, you don't ever lose that label and you don't get a chance to kind of get a different name where how many offensive coordinators do we see that are black? You know, I'm a 49er fan, Shanahan, you know, nothing against him. He's a great coach. As you were saying, nepotism, you know, his dad's the pipeline. And, you know, I just don't see too many African-American coaches in that seat to be able to be that offensive coordinator on a team that gets to a Super Bowl and all of a sudden gets, you know, that head coaching job where, you know, the team and the fan base and everybody's right behind you. You know, I just don't see that. Even with Tomlin, like we were saying, for the last 3 to 4 years, they've been trying to call for his job. And the guy's resilient, dude. He's like, he just fights it off and still does his job. And, you know, it's just very commendable for someone like him in this day and age, you know, that, you know, he's still holding it down. It'd be nice to start seeing some of these African-American coaches get a fair chance as, you know, some of these other guys do.
Yeah. To tag on to that, Coach O, you know, I think we were talking about having a black owner. I think it would be even more powerful if you have a white owner that changed the narrative in the way that you're saying. Like if a white owner comes out and says, hey, I'm picking up this, you know, black head coach, moving him up from offensive coordinator because he's an offensive genius and he can outcoach anybody else in the league. I think that would do wonders. I think it would, you know, totally revolutionize.
It's funny you said that because I was actually going to say that, but you know, the way O said that black coaches and black owners can understand how a kid coming up with the same type of, you know, environment, I guess I could see that too, but it's just hard to get past that boundary of, can you let the white owner connect, and did he come up the same way as the African-American kid? And it's just getting past the color of the skin, unfortunately, this late, you know, in 2020, and we just got to start doing better, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we're having these conversations, that these conversations are happening are eventually going to lead towards a shifting of the curve here as far as that is concerned. Now let's kind of like move on. Let's kind of talk about some other stuff that's going around the league, some funny headlines, some interesting headlines. I think we have some NFL players that have been in quarantine too long because we are getting some stories here that I kind of want to touch on. So the Andre Baker, Quinton Dunbar, so a couple of defensive backs were involved in a situation where there was an armed robbery, but they were trying to steal back their stuff. Crazy situation there. Apparently there was an underground card game. Some watches were stolen. Some assault rifles were brought in. Ugly situation, but then you combine that. You have Cody Latimer, another guy. He was playing a little bit with the Giants last year, played with the Denver Broncos. I believe he was with the Redskins currently. Apparently, another card game gone wrong. So there were some shots fired off in his house over some situation of money not being anteed up. Add that to Earl Thomas's situation. Well, you know, guys, this is a lesson for you. Keep in mind your Snapchat location. Keep in mind if your female has access to your Snapchat location, and just don't be a piece of shit and cheat on your female in an orgy with your brother.
Right.
That is probably to that story right there. And then to add on top of that, Tom Brady's breaking into houses and just walking into the areas in Tampa amongst game fines. So a lot of situations, these guys need to be in OTAs because some of these stories are just ridiculous, honestly.
Man, my bad to cut you off, bro. My only thing I got to say about this is besides Tom Brady, I recommend, you know, weed as the essential drug of choice, because Tom Brady's situation, you might walk through somebody's door, but everyone else, you know, you playing cards, you might laugh a little bit. You're not going to shoot nobody in the face for the most part. Take a toke. You feel me? That's my advice.
No, I think we might want to – I think COVID-19 might not be as risky as playing a poker game with an NFL player is the ultimate lesson of the story.
For real.
Dre, taking in all these stories, all these recent run-ins with law enforcement, what are some kind of initial thoughts? Because to me, it's just like insane that we have, again, just multi-million-dollar athletes that even feel the need to bring guns to a poker game to still back $70,000.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I really think that it's COVID-19 and being locked in the house, right? As we know that when it comes to these professional athletes, I think a lot of them, especially if you're in a sport like football, I think you're a little bit more closer to Dennis Rodman than you are to like a Steph Curry, right? Is you need to just get out and do your own thing sometimes because, you know, you literally run into people for a living, right? Or get tackled and hit by people for a living. And so, you know, these guys, I think they just need ways to relieve themselves just mentally, right? They need to get out of the house. But when you can't even go to the beach, for instance, or you can't even walk around the park without, you know, somebody telling you, hey, you need to go home. These guys just go a little bit stir crazy and then they end up bringing guns to poker games and stuff. And so that is the sad thing about, you know, these guys being locked at home. But yeah, you're exactly right, dude. If you're making millions of dollars, like I wish somebody would pay me millions of dollars. I would never leave my house. If they told me, hey, don't do anything wrong, don't leave your house, I'd sit there happily and be like, all right, I'm chilling with my millions. But no, I get it though. I think COVID-19 is just making people a little bit crazy.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, sitting in the house and, you know, I think some of these guys are kind of feeling, you know, a little pinch in their pocket, not necessarily knowing if their season's going to be happening. You know, I got to find a way to make some money. I'm not getting paid right now. And it's just the unfortunate thing about, you know, some of these guys, as talented as they are, coming from some of these environments, it's hard to get that environment out of some of these guys and the people that are around them. Think about it. You know, we give these kids, they go from, you know, 17, 18 years old, living in some of these inner cities. They go to college, they play football for, you know, 3 years. They go to the NFL. And, you know, some of those same people and those connections are still tied to them. And as much just because you give them money in their bank account, that doesn't necessarily change their personality and how they think. You know, it's just the unfortunate thing that some of these guys, as long as they're getting this money, they're not getting the same guidance to go along with it. And, you know, like you were saying, if I got paid that amount of money, you know, why do I need to go to someone's house and try to rob them and this and that? I'll just stay at home. But, you know, it's the unfortunate thing. These guys are young, they're dumb. Some of the people around them are even dumber than them. And they just do stupid stuff like this.
Yep. And I think that goes back to, you know, sort of the head coaching conversation that we were having earlier is when you've got a predominantly white coaching staff and head coaches, a lot of times they don't grow up in these same situations. But this is where if you had a minority coach that can relate, that was like, hey, I grew up in the hood too, right? Like I got threatened several times for my life. I know what it's like. Let me help you through these situations, especially when we're all going through, you know, being stuck at home together in a sense. And so, yeah, I think, you know, going back to that, you're right. It's hard to remove that from these guys that grew up in such a way. And now, you know, they're just older. They still have a lot of ties back to, you know, either their old activity and behavior that they were doing or direct ties to people that they used to hang out with that maybe weren't the best influences on them.
All right. I'll close the show here with Aaron Rodgers finally made his first statement regarding the Jordan Love pick itself. So we had some strong feelings on draft day about what we thought about Aaron Rodgers' future following the Jordan Love selection, some places we could potentially see him ending up. What Aaron said on the subject was, I think I was more surprised at the pick based on my own feeling of wanting to play into my 40s and really the realization that it doesn't change the controllables a little bit. Because as much as I feel confident in my abilities and what I can accomplish and what we can accomplish, there are some new factors that are out of my control. And so my sincere desire to start and finish with the same organization may not be a reality at this point. Now, Aaron is kind of a unique personality. He's a little bit of an enigma. It's hard to really read what this guy wants to do. And some stories that came out after draft day is that Coach Matt LaFleur was trying to essentially make a power move message to Aaron Rodgers that we're ready to move on from you. I got my quarterback of the future. And if you don't start playing ball with me a little bit, we're going to start going in that direction. In terms of Aaron Rodgers finishing with the Green Bay Packers, does anyone here want to make an argument for why he will? No takers?
Why he will finish with the Packers?
Why he will finish with the Packers. Anyone think that that's even a remote possibility?
I mean, I think there is a remote possibility, but the likelihood of it, especially with making this type of a draft pick, I probably am leaning maybe like 70% that he'll finish. It all depends on the progression of this Jordan Love kid. Is he going to be as good as Aaron Rodgers was with Aaron Rodgers, learning behind Brett Favre? We don't know. It's just unfortunate. Granted, yes, I'm a 49er fan, but, throwing this out there, Aaron Rodgers is probably one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch play. But like I said off air, the organization did this with you, so you can't be too upset if they do it to you now. So, it's just business at the end of the day. He's just got to figure out a way to beat the 49ers. I don't know if that happens, but, maybe if he took less money and let the team, build around him, he might actually have a fighting chance against the Niners to advance into the playoffs. But I don't know. I think he might stay for his career. Who knows what that team does?
Well, as a Niners fan myself, let's certainly hope not. Austin, what are you feeling on Aaron Rodgers moving forward?
Man, to me, what they did, that's like, trying to replace me with an understudy. Hey, he's just going to come in, if you tell me you're feeling sick or you can't come over yet, he'll just fill in the podcast. And then it's like, I appreciate it, but at the same time, they should have drafted a receiver. They should have drafted an offensive lineman. They should have drafted somebody that they look like they're making a little effort to help him. And I don't think it was the right pick this year. They could have done this 2 years from now.
I think it's going to come down to which is the stronger of the two forces. Is it Aaron and his competitiveness? Because we know he's a really competitive person, and if he got screwed over by the organization, I could very easily see him like, okay, you know what? I'm going to show you. I'm going to play till I'm 40, and in my next contract, I'm jumping teams, and I'm gonna beat you guys, right? So I could even see him going to a division rival just because that's the level of competitor that Aaron Rodgers is. At the same time, where I think there is the slight possibility that he would finish as a Packer is there's been times in recent years where he's just looked done with football, where he's basically just like, you could see the life is sort of drained out of him, and the way he talks, like, the season didn't go the way that I wanted it to. It's whatever. Like, he just, you can see it in his face in his interviews. You can hear it in his voice. So I think if he's at the point where he's like, you know what, like, I really just don't need this anymore. Like, I've made my money. I won my Super Bowl, right? Everybody still considers me one of the best quarterbacks ever, even if I wasn't as successful in the rings department as some of these other quarterbacks. So if he says like, hey, I'm just ready to call it quits after this contract, because there's no way he's getting traded, I don't think. That's the only way I see him finishing up as a Packer.
I'd agree with that one.
Personally, myself, and I made this bold hot take before, so I'll reiterate it once again. Aaron Rodgers will be playing in either LA or Las Vegas in the 2021 season. You can write that one in stone for me. If it's a old take exposed, I'll eat that out. But that's Juju Talk Sports.
Wow,
add that to my resume.
Wow. So you think A-Rod is out after this year?
I do. I really have like a strong feeling that he will not be the Green Bay Packers starting quarterback in the 2021 season. Now,
do you think he just whines and complains and mopes and groans and doesn't play well and demands a trade? Or like how do you think it's going to shake out?
Well, the way I see it is it could go in a couple different ways. So Jordan Love, we know that he has a lot of talent. He has a lot of the elite skills that NFL head coaches are looking for, and certainly Matt LaFleur, I'm sure, was looking for when he drafted him. If Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love develop some sort of connection over practice, training camps, basically this entire season leading into next year's team formulation, draft, all that kind of stuff, then the Packers will have to look at their team and look at other teams and say to themselves, well, if we trade Aaron now, what can we get for him? If Aaron has a good season, you could get a lot for him. You could get several first-round picks for him. If Aaron has a bad season and is looking more like he's done, then you have to ask yourself, maybe this is just our time to move on from him. It would be hard for them to release him, not get any kind of value from him, but they could still get some return on their investment there.
They're going to Brett Favre him. You think they're going to Brett Favre him?
I just think that with how quick things move in our society today, like look how quick that Kyrie trade happened with the Celtics a couple years ago. It was like Kyrie and LeBron had one offhanded kind of like exchange, and suddenly a couple months later, he's a Celtic. I think over the course of a year, because you know what's going to happen in the mainstream media, this narrative is going to be formed. And Aaron Rodgers, given his personality, I don't think it's going to go that well. And I think he's going to actually want out of this situation as time goes on. So it's going to be a mix of Aaron. It's going to be a mix of the organization. Matt LaFleur is going to have a say in things. And I think that a quarterback-needy team out there is going to jump at the opportunity to get a guy like Aaron Rodgers in the back end of his career.
And you say you got what, Chargers or the Raiders?
Chargers, Rams, or Raiders are three teams that I kind of have earmarked as potential locations.
Really? So you just think the Rams are just going to give up on Jared Goff like that?
Well, here's the thing. If you're Sean McVay and you're in the situation where you were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago and Jared Goff 2 straight years has let you down, you're going to think to yourself, I'm a good enough head coach. Les Snead, the Rams organization, they think that Sean McVay is a good enough head coach. If they don't think that Jared Goff is a good enough quarterback to elevate them over the Niners, over the Seahawks, or even the Cardinals who are on the come up, then they're going to look at the next best quarterback option that they can get. And I think it's more likely for a team in that position to be able to go after a highly touted free agent and or trade target than it is for them to be able to draft one of these top-end prospects, especially because the clock will start ticking on Sean McVay if he doesn't return to the playoffs this year.
I could see the Raider thing, but I don't know, man. These teams have they got a huge investment in Jared Goff, man. I mean, he was a number 1 draft pick. Yeah, I don't know, man. I guess you're in that what have you done for me lately. I could totally see the Raider thing. I could totally see John Gruden. He loves Aaron Rodgers. I could totally see that. The Chargers, I could totally see them just investing in Herbert and his progression. So I might go with you on the Raider thing. You kind of sold me on that Raider thing. I could see the organization, Brett Favre, but I don't know. I feel like A-Rod still has a good couple of years, high-level years left in him. And, you might be onto something. Maybe he balls out this year and they trade him and get something for him. Who knows?
Hey, we got to make some bold takes here, We got to make the show memorable. If we got any of these, takes and they click, I'll say this. I got lucky. I named my Super Bowl pick correctly. Now, I got disappointed the fact that it ended up being the Chiefs over the Niners. But, hey, we can't win them all, right? We can either be right or we can have our teams win. You have to be unbiased sometimes. But all right, guys.
I got one hot take. That's it. Scott Burrell.
Here we go.
Scott Burrell's the softest player of all time. I'm sorry I had to say it. I love him. I had to say it though.
Why? Why'd you have to throw that out there?
Okay, because first of all, how tall was Scott Burrell?
I don't know. What is he, 6'6", 6'7"?
6'5" to 6'7", I'd say. My dog was getting rolled on the entire journey, and my dog Steve Kerr had the courage. Even if he didn't punch him in the face, he punched him in the chest. And Michael Jordan liked him a little bit more. And it's just like, yo, I could be the Scott Burrell for a couple months. But even me going, yeah, okay, Mike, yeah. Eventually I'm going to snap too. You can't. As a person, not even a man or a woman, as a person, you got to fight back, bro. I love Mike, but that was fucked.
It's funny because I've coached kids like Scott Burrell. And you try to you like Mike, you try to do things and poke at them just to try to get them fired up, just to see you're like, damn, dude, do you ever get mad, or are you just this nice all the time, bro? Because when it's time to get in between these lines, I need you to be a warrior, not like a baby. And I can feel that, but some people are just gentle giants, bro.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the one time I fought back on a coach, I got bent. So, can't win them all. That's my problem. All righty. McCorvey, Cytryn. So there's a question I got to ask you before you guys head out, and then I want you to do all the necessary plugs, all the obligatory plugs for me. But first, I want you to answer favorite all-time sports movie. Go.
I'll go first. For football, Friday Night Lights, and for basketball, I'd probably go Glory Road.
Okay, respect. I like both those movies. Austin?
All right. For basketball, I'm going to go Coach Carter because I'm looking like Worm. And then, I'm chill. Oh, I hate you. And then for football, I'm going to just throw out the replacements because I love Keanu Reeves. Amazing.
Billy, you're a Billy.
All right, guys, where to listen, where to find you. Tell the people, educate the people, let them know.
You can find the McCorvey and Cytryn show on every platform possible, Apple, Spotify, you name it. You can find us on Instagram, the McCorvey and Cytryn show. As of right now, there's no basketball going on, so I really try to do a lot of on this day type of stuff, whether it's your favorite player or re-jogs your memory of, a great player from 98 or 2008. I keep bringing that content for people. But You can find us on Instagram, find us on any podcast platform. If you're a true hoop fan, whether it's, coaching or a fan of players, or you want to try to figure out a way to, get to college or become a better basketball player, we definitely have that on our platform.
Dre, do you want to say any closing words about MMA 101, what we can expect this week? I hear you're about to drop another episode on us.
Yeah, so I was actually getting ready to. I don't know if it'll be out this week just because I'm actually doing some project management training. So I've got to study for that and then take my PMP test. But hopefully next week is when it'll be out. So it'll be a really cool one. We're looking at data from like over 1,000 fighters to figure out what the best gym is. And what the best countries are going to be will also be sort of included there. So we'll find out the best fighting gyms. What I do want to say, though, is Coach O, A-Money, thank you guys for hopping on the show. It's been a pleasure having you.
We're just flattered that you guys reached out and wanted to collab. So this has been awesome for us.
Thank you so much.
One of our favorite things to do, bring on interesting folks with interesting conversations and have an awesome podcast. Now, speaking of awesome podcasts, at Slumpbuster Podcast on IG, at Slumpbuster Pod on Twitter. Find us on all major streaming platforms, but don't just find us. Hit that subscribe button. Use our promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get 20% off plus free shipping on all great stuff like the Lawnmower 3.0. Other than that, folks, stay safe, happy, and healthy. And if you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. We'll see you next week.